You'll use your ruler, the 1 inch on your ruler, to measure in from the corner and make marks to indicate that 1 inch mark from the edge in. This will help us set up our border. You see the corner there, and going diagonally, you'll place your inch into the page and make your mark. The next thing I'll do is line up those marks and create a nice straight edge with your ruler. If you're having a hard time with your ruler, that's okay. It doesn't have to be a perfect border. You just want to get something in there, some kind of border, so we're not coloring all the way to the edge of the page. And if you need to start the video over or pause it to create your border, you can do that. Just go at your own pace. I'm going to place my finger next in the center just to figure out where the center might be and make a mark. Then I will measure that mark by measuring the top and bottom portions to see if they are even. It's truly in the center. And you know, it's okay if it's not exact, but I'm going to measure from my tip of my pencil to my hand where I'm pinching at the border. And I also want to measure side to side. So tip of the pencil in the center to my hand. It's a little bit bigger on the left hand side, so I'm going to erase and move the center a little bit to the left. I think that's good enough for me. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Bring your ruler in for those guidelines. Draw as lightly as you can for those guidelines. We will erase them later. I'm going to turn this page to, instead of horizontally, we're doing portrait style, because this is a portrait of a rhinoceros animal. So I made it the long way up and down. Turned it the long way up and down. Now building in the center of the face, or the shape, the head shape. I want to find the direction the head shape is tilted first. Looking at the portion on the bottom to the chin, it's maybe 2 fingers up from the border, so I know this is going to be a long shape. And from the top is pretty close to the border on the top. So I can look at that space up there, about a finger width. So draw a little bit into the chin, and using my measure marks to indicate how thick the head is, looking at the space between my measuring marks and the edges of the page, but also inside. So there's not as much space on the other side of the measuring line. You can see it's a little more thin on this side of the face, whereas on the other side it's very thick, filling up space. So just looking at that thickness and where the center of the shape is. Top of the head, bringing my light sketching to the shape, because you might have to erase and redraw the shape, maybe adjust parts of the shape. You can pause the video and start adjusting your shapes. But you can see I'm just lightly bringing it in so it's easy to erase. It's definitely longer than my hand, so we have a nice long shape if it's longer than your hand. Small space on the top, small space on the bottom, under the chin. Now I'm going to create an oval, but what I should be doing is drawing a center line through that oval shape, then creating the shape. Because that gives me the direction of the oval. Like, you know, this will be an ear, and the ear is just tilted. The other side, it's tilted in a different direction. So I can see that it crosses, or it sits on it crosses the large shape. That line overlaps into the head shape. Now I am measuring the tip point of my, what feels like a cone shape. It's very light in there. It's like a thin cone shape. In front of the ear, I had put a measuring mark on top of the cone shape that was close to the ear. And there's my cone shape. So this is what we are mimicking, except that it's a little bit different. This is a very short cone, whereas this one is a long cone with a round edge on the bottom. And I'm going to curve the front because this is his horn. So the front portion's curved out a little bit, bowing out a little bit. And the back portion, I'm moving that line in, it's bowing in just a little bit. So it's like a cone, except that it's bowing out. Now it feels like more of a horn shape. Putting a measuring mark where the next one comes out behind this one because they overlap. This is the one we just drew is on top of the one behind it. And the tip of the horn actually ends up inside the ear shape there. And it bows out a little bit because it's a horn. It goes the same way. It's like bowing down. Notice I didn't make the bottom yet. I separated the bottom because this part lands on the face. We want to make sure it's round, like the cone is sitting on a table. You can see how much it bows out. It's not straight. It bows in. Or down. It bows down. Now I'm going to bring in the tips of the ears. Notice how I drew each one separately, each side separately to make it really pointy. And do the same on the opposite side. It kind of goes to the left side and goes into the ear shape this time. Bowing up. And then there's another side to it going around that oval we made earlier. Connecting the ear now down into the side of the head. And this one overlaps and comes inside the head shape. And again, you can pause and really look at the shape before continuing. I brought in the back of the neck. And now I'm bringing in the front of the body underneath the chin. Connecting the other ear into the head, so things are starting to fall into place. Those shapes, the ovals, are starting to fall into place in the head shape. I curved it a little bit, wavy. And so a lot of shapes will change when we draw animals from these basic shapes. Like the mouth, the bottom lip now bows outside of the shape that we had before. There's a little bit of space there. You can see I drew outside of the shape. Now getting into more organic forms of the animal. Erasing a little bit, we can clean up inside of the horns. We can clean up some of the measuring lines inside the ear. We don't need that line anymore to make the ear feel complete. Erasing all inside of the ear. And now bringing in more organic shapes. That felt a little bit too high. I'm going to bring it a little bit lower, actually. Sometimes that happens, so you can just erase and start over. If you don't like the way a shape looks, you can always rewind this video or start from the beginning if you want to catch up and find a good place to pause it and really look at the shapes. Cleaning up more of those guidelines in the ear. So now we have 2 complete ears, 2 complete horns. And we can bring in some of the folds of the rhino's neck. And the folds in front of his face or his mouth. Fold underneath the horn. Looks like there. Oh, I'm lining up my pencil with a straight line where it touches the horn. I can see the eye just appears in the middle of the face there. Lines up with the horn, the bottom horn, into a C shape. Then I'll complete the eyelid that folds over that C shape and a little under eyelid fold. Erasing the guidelines, erasing anything that will clean up the drawing. Now looking at the cone shape again, we had the shading portion. So there's the gray and the core shadow in the middle. You see the core deeper shadow in the middle. We're going to start to shade the horns in this pattern. A little bit of gray on the edges, leaving open a white shape for the highlight. And then you have your core shadow there, the deepest part of the shadow, we're going to shade it in the same way. Really quickly, I'll bring in a gray scale. It's good to practice these gray scales and just remembering the value system. The first one being white, and then the second one being just a little bit darker. Then you have a box that right below that that's a little bit even more, has more of a dark value. We'll bring in a very dark gray next, which looks pretty dark. But I think we can do an even darker, almost black box on the bottom. Really give yourself a grayscale somewhere on the side. If you've already made one, you can take it out and look at it. Make a new one, that's fine too. It's always good practice. And that way you can really see which value we need to use for each area, like a key. We'll use this value scale to now shade in one of the horns. And you kind of got a preview of what it would look like, and now we'll start filling it in. There is the core shadow right, like the side, right side middle of the horn shape. To make it look round, we need that core shadow. A little bit lighter, more of a gray tone in the front half of the horn, leaving open that white space in the middle. I'm going to deepen that core shadow because it really isn't dark enough. I'm going to bring in a slightly deeper value to it. And then kind of blending out the edge a little with a light gray. Erasing out that highlight in the middle, makes it look very shiny. this about that value. On the outside, I'll make it a slightly deeper to make it feel round and shiny in contrast to the highlight. Maybe that one, I'll shade this in a little too, just a little bit more, not too dark. I'm going to start on the second one behind, doing the same thing. So that's the core shadow all the way down the center of the second one as well. I have that gray slightly lighter. They almost look the same, so I might bring in a deeper core shadow after, like layer another deeper core shadow. It's better to try to layer into the darker values. This one's more of a light gray filling in that area, and then we have the slightly darker layering of the core shadow in the middle. Now we have two very shiny horns, which makes it feel like a hard surface or a hard texture. I can blend with my finger a little bit, softening the graphite and erasing out the highlight area if needed. We can start to fill in the eye. I made a highlight shape in the middle, and I'm coloring around that highlight so that the eye appears shiny as well. So the contrast between the very black part of the eyeball to that shine, you can see it a little bit closer here. I'm going to deepen the eyeball, make it really strong, really dark. I'm going to erase this line. It looks like we don't need this line up to the ear. We'll just get rid of it. I'll come back to the eye, looking at the lightest value I have on there, just a light gray. Blending in just a little bit around the folds of the eye. Underneath and on top of the folds. I'm holding it way back on the pencil so I don't press too hard. It makes it very easy to shade lightly. Shading a little bit on the eyelid there, very lightly. Bringing in a shade to the chin underneath the neck, the folds. And bringing in a little bit of shading to each fold here, starting on this top one, on the top portion of that line, on the top portion above the line. This one looks like above the line, a little bit of gray shading, soft shading above it. This gives the skin of the rhino a little bit of form. It's not just one line on there, it now has a curve to the lip once we bring in a little bit of shading. And now I'll bring a shadow underneath the chin. A little bit under each fold under the neck. And a little bit more under the chin there. Outlining the line of the mouth and the chin. We'll come up by the ears and start to shade right inside of the ear. Having that slightly deeper shadow inside of the ear and then moving out with a little bit of a lighter gray. I'm using the side of my pencil and holding it in the middle or far back in order to shade. So keep in mind, sometimes we forget and we start to hold it at the tip, which makes it really hard shading and deeper values. And we hold it back a little bit and relax it and use the side of the pencil. You can shade up a little bit more lightly. Giving a shadow at the front of the face, a little bit behind the horn. Something nice and smooth. And we almost have everything complete. We just need a little bit of shading next to the horns here on the bottom. a little bit darker just at the edges. We'll bring them out. A little bit of shading in front of the face, on the other side of the horn. So we're going to build in contrast in the background. So this is where a deeper value in the background at the edge will bring out the whole animal. So starting to fill in a deeper value just outside of the face here. Now, in just a second, we're going to pause and do some a shading technique on the side. So you can practice this technique, and then we'll go back to the background. So practice the value scale dark to light, bringing in these tornado shapes. You might already know how to do this, but practice anyway, the dark to light shading and blending it out. Very, very dark, press hard. I'm actually holding it at the front of the pencil to press hard. And then lifting off little by little until it looks blended out into the lightest value. We'll do this up close. You can just shade really, really darkly. You can go over and over it until it's really dark too. Then pulling it out to a lighter value, pressing lighter and lighter and lighter until it is the lightest value. So that's what we're going to do in the background to fill it in. Darker near the horns and near the face of the animal, and pulling it out as lighter and lighter and lighter. And it creates a wonderful atmosphere in the behind of the rhino. And just up to the border you created. So you're not filling it into the end of the page. You're just going up lightly to the border. See how I blended out that dark shading we did before. Pressing darkly and then pulling it outwards, lighter and lighter and lighter. Deepening the value around the ear in the background, filling up that space between the horns. See, I'm changing directions and just getting it filled in at a deeper gray value. contrast between the horn and the background. This is what really brings out the animal. It feels a little more realistic when we create this sort of the contrast between the background and the object or animal. Take your time with this. If it takes a while to fill in the background, that's okay. You can pause the video and catch up, or do the whole thing and keep watching. Again, if the background's really scratchy and textured, that's okay. Again, it takes some practice to use the graphite in certain ways and to make things smooth. So don't feel like yours has to be perfect or extra smooth. You can just fill it in and you'll see the contrast regardless. It'll come together. I'm just deepening around it just a little bit and fanning it out. Making the space between the ears and behind the head just a little darker, almost black. So bringing in the nose, you just have a circular shape there that lines up with the fold of the face, and another shape on top of that to create the form of the nose. So an underline there within the nose, and filling it in. Filling in the shadow around the top of the nose and within the bottom portion of the nose. And then you can sign your name when you're finished. So again, if you're not finished, go ahead and rewind to the part that you need to see, or just pause the video and sign your name in the corner.